The habitat of the river has been broken into two parts. So that is called as habitat fragmentation. Dams are built in the center of a river, right? So that whatever water is flowing, that can be collected by the huge dams. They act as a barrier to fish that needs to migrate to spawning. So spawning means in order to give birth to young ones, they need a suitable ground. So typically local fish species, they are not that well adapted to a new environment. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on environmental studies for second semester B.C.A. I'm Dr. Divya, Environmental Studies Faculty, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in today's session, let us continue with studying Unit 3, that is Natural Resources, Renewable and Non-Renewable Resources. So in this unit, let us study about the dams and what are the effects that the dams pose on the ecosystem or on the environment. So let's study about the impacts of dam building on environment. So dams are very important in terms of agricultural purposes and also in terms of providing water resources to a particular set of people in a town or in a village area. So that water can be used for various agricultural, domestic, industrial and various other purposes. But this storage of water by the dams actually poses a problem when dams are built on the rivers. So what are these problems that the dam poses on the environment we shall look into. So first is because of construction of dam, habitat fragmentation will occur, flooding and destruction of the surrounding habitat, that is wherever in which river dam is built, there the surrounding habitat will get flooded and it will get destroyed. Next, the greenhouse gases will increase because the flooding will kill the trees. Therefore, the amount of trees in that or the population of trees in that particular area will drastically reduce, therefore increasing the greenhouse gases. And not just that, the sediments, because dams are built in the center of a river, right? So that whatever water is flowing, that can be collected by the huge dams. So when the water is flowing, what happens? Along with that, soil also tends to flow. But the further flow of the soil will be prevented by the dam that is there in between the river. So therefore, it creates in the building up of sediments. So therefore, sediments starts to build up behind the dam. And also, it has a negative impact on the local fish population as well. So all these different impacts, let us study in detail exactly what threats it poses to the environment. So first talking about the habitat fragmentation because of building dam. So dams actually they act as a barrier to fish. So there is a river which is freely flowing. Now, when the river is freely flowing, the fishes can flow along with the water currents and it can move from one part of the river to the other part, especially during the breeding season, right? But now imagine in between the river a dam is built. So here there is a river as you can see. In between if a dam is built, this dam acts as a barrier or it acts as a wall wherein it will prevent because the dam would have gone deep into the soil, right? It would have covered the entire river from the base. So there what happens? The blockage in the water will occur. Therefore, the fishes from one portion of the river, they cannot travel through the other side of the river. So therefore, it will affect the fish population because the breeding of the fishes will be disturbed. So that is the main reason how habitat fragmentation can occur because of construction of dams. So therefore, they act as a barrier to fish that needs to migrate to spawning. So spawning means in order to give birth to young ones, they need a suitable ground and that suitable ground will always be in any other parts of the river. So therefore, they cannot move from one part of the river to the other side of the river. Therefore, and it will affect the reproductive capability of the fishes and therefore the fish population in that particular river wherever the dam is built will drastically reduce. That is habitat fragmentation, wherein the habitat of the river has been broken into two parts. So that is called as habitat fragmentation. So this habitat fragmentation will impact the population of the fish, and therefore it can negatively impact on other species, because fishes are also play a major role in the food chain. You all have learnt about food chain and food web in the previous sessions, right? Of the previous chapters that we had learnt about it there. So here what happens here is, say for example, if the fish population increases, then the larger fishes that are there, they will not get enough of food, which who are depending on this particular small fishes for food will not get enough of food. So therefore the larger fish population will also decrease. If the larger fish population decreases in that particular area, the aquatic birds will not have enough of food. The aquatic birds who are depending on these fishes will not have enough food. Therefore the aquatic bird population will decrease. So that is how it forms, or it affects the major food chain and the food web. So therefore it has a negative impact on other species in the food chain that usually depend on the fish, or that are preyed upon by the fish, or that mainly depend on the fish as a source of their food. This is how the dams can have an impact on the habitat fragmentation, therefore an impact on the fish population, and therefore an impact on the food chain, and that food chain will imbalance the environment or the ecosystem. Next is, the impact of dam building can cause flooding and destruction of surrounding habitat. So when a dam is built, what happens? The surrounding areas that are there, they tend to flood. So this flood can pose a lot of threat to the people living there, to the agricultural farmlands, to the fertility of the soil, to the tree population that is there, and whatnot. So we'll study about this. So dams actually, they form a separate reservoir. Say for example, here we have a dam. Because of the construction of a dam, a flooding might occur somewhere nearby. Therefore, a new water body gets created there, or a new water reservoir can get created there. So it creates a separate reservoir upstream from the dam, which spills into the surrounding environment, and therefore it can cause flooding of the ecosystem, and therefore the habitat that once existed there. So once that was a terrestrial habitat will now get converted into aquatic habitat because of the flooding that has occurred due to the construction of dams in the river. So such flooding, they can either kill many different organisms. So terrestrial organisms, can they live in the water? No. So when flooding occurs, those terrestrial organisms can get destroyed. The plant species there, which are not accustomed or which are not capable of living in the water 24/7, they will get destroyed, and therefore it will alter the food chain, and that alteration in the food chain can in turn bring an imbalance in the environment or the ecosystem. And such flooding can kill or displace many different organisms, including plants, wildlife, and also humans. So humans also, if they are not alerted prior itself that the dam is going to cause flooding. So what happens with dam is, sometimes when there is heavy rainfall also, the flooding can occur because of dams. So usually the river would be free flowing if the dams are not built. But now what has happened, because the dam is built there, the free flow of the river is not there. Therefore, whenever there is a heavy downpour or heavy rainfall, the water cannot flow through the river freely. So therefore, sudden flooding that we call flash floods and all that will get created, and within span of seconds, the people will not even know that their lives are in danger. So therefore, it can pose a threat to the human life as well. So dams, how much they are important for industrial purpose, for domestic purpose, for agricultural purpose, to fulfill the water needs of the people. On the other hand, it has a major impact on the life of the people as well. So this is about the flooding and destruction of the surrounding habitat because of dam construction. Next is, I told you, dams can increase the emission of greenhouse gases. So this doesn't mean that building dams will release greenhouse gases. What they mean is, on other terms, what it means is that dams, as I told you, they can cause flooding of the nearby areas. And not just that, the construction of dams can loosen the soil, because during the construction of dams, heavy drilling machineries and all that are brought. So when such drilling machineries, dynamites and all that are used during the construction of dam, when heavy work or pressure is put on the soil that is there in the surrounding forest areas or surrounding areas, they tend to loosen up. So when they loosen up easily, they can just slide off. One small rain, they can just slide off. So if they slide off, what happens? Along with that, the trees and all that are destructed, or it will get destroyed. And not just that, the dams, they can cause flooding of the nearby areas. That also will destroy the tree population. Now trees are the one that actually they lessen the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, especially carbon dioxide, because plants will use this carbon dioxide during the process of photosynthesis. Now when tree population itself is reduced there, the greenhouse gases cannot be properly utilized. Therefore, it will lead to accumulation of greenhouse gases in the environment. So that is how indirectly the construction of dams causes an increase in the greenhouse gases. So dams, they cause flooding of the surrounding habitat, which will lead to killing of trees and other plant species. And therefore, when these plant species and trees, when they decompose, they release or when they rot, they release large amount of carbon into the atmosphere. And also not just that, so when they release carbon to the atmosphere, carbon is one of the major greenhouse gases, right? So this is one of the major greenhouse gas that is there. So this is how indirectly dams can increase the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And because the river is no longer flowing freely, the water can also become stagnant. So freely flowing water, the water is free flowing, right? And it will get replenished every time. So when it is free flowing, all the dead plant debris or logs or whatever, dead animals, fishes, whatever is there in the water, that will freely flow off from one place to another. It will not cause much a problem. But dams, what it will do is, it will prevent or it will bring a stop to the free flowing nature of the river. So therefore, wherever the dams are created, it causes stagnancy a bit. The water will become stagnant. That is, it will lose its free flowing capacity. So what happens? Whatever plant or animal debris or whatever decomposes in the water, that will start to collect in the water itself, and therefore it will start to deplete the oxygen content in the water. Also, therefore, depletion in the oxygen content or reduction in the oxygen content will pose a threat to the already existing plants and fishes in that particular water or in that particular river. So therefore, it will further cause the death of the plants and animals, further polluting the water on the other hand. So that is how the dams can have an impact on the environment because of the increase of the greenhouse gas production. And this lack of oxygen, it creates a situation where methane will get to form. So the dead and decaying matter that is there, they will start to release methane. That methane can escape into the atmosphere, and methane is also one of the important greenhouse gases, therefore causing accumulation of greenhouse gases. And not just that, the methane, if it gets released into the water also, it poses a threat to the aquatic organisms that are living in the water. So methane, which is a very potent or toxic greenhouse gas, is usually gets produced because of the decomposition of the plant material at the bottom of the stagnant reservoir, and therefore later on it can also get released into the atmosphere, therefore causing a major change in the climate. So greenhouse gases, we know that they make the or they increase the temperature of the earth, making the earth warmer, right? So when the earth becomes warmer, what happens? It will again start to melt the glaciers, the snow caps and all that. So again what happens? These snow caps and glaciers will melt and enter into a river itself. Now in that river, if dam is there, again it will result in flooding. So this is how the dam construction can have a major impact on the environment indirectly by increasing the greenhouse gases. So next, talking about the sediment buildup behind the dam. So the construction of dams can build up the sediments. Sediments are nothing but the sandy kind of wet soil that is there. So that is now called as the sediment. So you might have seen in riverbeds and all that. No, if you touch the soil, it is very velvety like, it is very smooth. That is, and it is always wet. That is nothing but the sediment. So dams on river, they prevent the free flow of rivers. So what happens here is, because of soil erosion, obviously the soil gets flushed into the river. But if the river is free flowing, the soil gets distributed in different areas in the riverbed, right? But here, or in the bottom of the river. But now here, because of construction of the dam, the river is not flowing neatly. So whatever soil erosion occurs, it will start to collect in that particular portion of the river itself. That is, if the dam is built here, say for example, there is a river here, a dam is built somewhere here. So behind the dam, so here the water is flowing, carrying the soil particles. Now it cannot flow further because the dam is built here. So behind the dam itself, what happens? All the soil and debris will start to collect here, and it will start to build up the sediment. As and when the sediment or the soil building occurs, that river can entirely become a terrestrial habitat. That aquatic habitat can get converted into a terrestrial habitat. Can you see here how this was supposed to be a river? It was supposed to be behind the dam. As you can see, the sediments have started to settle there. So therefore, this sediment, which is not able to move further because of the loss of free flow nature by the river, they get deposited naturally downstream behind the region where the dam is being built, or behind the dams, forming new river banks, river delta, etc. Now the habitat of that particular river got entirely changed. How succession will occur? Now because of the deposition of sediment, all the grasses, seeds, the seeds of the grasses, plants and all that, if it falls here, they will start to germinate and they will start to develop into new plants, and eventually what happens, that was once a aquatic ecosystem will get converted into a terrestrial ecosystem. So these changes in sedimentation can also lead to quite a lot of alterations in the plant life and animal life that were once there, and therefore the organisms which were already inhabiting there, their life will get disturbed because the aquatic habitat would have got converted into a terrestrial habitat because of the deposition of the sediment over a period of time. So this is how the sediment buildup in a dam can occur because of dam construction, therefore altering the ecosystem of the river itself. Next, the building of dam can have a negative impact on the local fish population. So typically local fish species, they are not that well adapted to a new environment. So a simple aquarium, if you take, if you have a freshwater aquarium at home, can you bring a tropical fish or the fishes that live in a marine ecosystem or marine environment, can you bring that fish and leave it in your aquarium? No. What you'll have to do, you'll have to maintain the salinity of the aquarium if you want to grow a marine fish there, right? So the same way, fishes, they cannot adapt to any changes in the pH of the water or the salinity of the water or the other natures or property of the water. A freshwater fish will always thrive or survive only in fresh waters, and a marine water fish will always thrive and survive only in marine waters. So therefore, or local fish species. So there is a local fish species saying that You cannot take that local fish species and put it somewhere in other areas. Why? Because they will not survive there. They are meant to survive in their own particular habitat and nowhere else. So therefore, typically local fish species will not be capable of adapting to new environment that is present after a dam is built. So what happens when a dam is built? So when a dam is built, what happens? The quality of the water changes, the pH of the water changes. So therefore, that water will become a new environment to the local fish, and therefore these fishes will not be capable of surviving and they will start to die, and their population will start to decrease very slowly, and finally the population will become completely extinct from that particular area itself. So the factors that impact their survival are the blockage of migration routes. So I told you, if a dam is constructed in between a river, so there was a free flowing river, now a dam is constructed between that particular river, the fishes cannot migrate from this side of the river to the other side. And why they need to migrate? Because for breeding purpose, right? Otherwise, new fish population will not develop. So therefore, the older fishes, once they die, new fish population will not be there, and therefore it will bring down a drastic reduction and ultimately the elimination of the entire fish population. And a disconnection from the river's floodplain will occur, and changes in the river flow will also occur. Construction of the dam can always change the flow of river because of landslides or because of various other reasons, because of flooding and all that. So when the course of the river gets changed, these local fishes will not be able to adapt that very well, and because of changes in temperature, so the construction of dams will also alter the temperature of the water, which is not suitable for the local fish, and also it will alter the turbidity of the water. So the turbidity, the fishes need a particular free flow of water for them to easily survive there. But once the turbidity of the water is lost, the fish population also will drastically reduce. And next, or what happens is, because of sediment building also, the water that was once clear will start to become turbid, or it will start to become dirtied. So that dirtied water will not be a good place or a good habitat for the local fishes, therefore causing the death of the fishes. And also a reduction in the dissolved oxygen content will occur. So that we have already studied, right? Because the water is not able to free flow properly, all the dead organisms that are there, they will start to collect in one particular place itself, increasing the activity of the microbes. Therefore, these microbes which are aerobic, they'll start making use of the oxygen, and therefore the oxygen content in the water will drastically reduce. Therefore, there will not be any oxygen for the fishes there. So therefore, because of the lack of dissolved oxygen also, the local fish population can get diminished, and also because of changes in the local plant life. So these local fishes can depend only on the local aquatic plants in which they are there. But if these plants get destroyed because of dam construction, the local fish population will also get destroyed eventually. So this is how building of dam can have a negative impact on the local fish population. And not just that, what happens during dam construction is a lot of chemicals can enter into the pond. These chemicals will in turn cause the algal bloom. That is, algal bloom, you all might have seen some of the ponds, lakes and all that. On that green color velvet mat like plants will be growing. So that is nothing but algal bloom. So because of all the chemicals and all that getting accumulated there, and because of over deposition of the sediments in the rivers in which the dams have been built, it will result in the overgrowth of the algae. So when algae overgrowth grows, what happens? Sunlight will not be able to penetrate into the water. So if the sunlight is not able to penetrate into the water, the plants cannot grow properly. So if the plants do not grow, then oxygen content in the water will reduce. If the oxygen content in the water reduces, The fishes that are there will not have enough oxygen for their survival. So therefore, they become starved of oxygen and that particular area becomes a dead zone. Means it will become a dead zone because it won't be capable of supporting any forms of river life there. So that is how the dams can completely alter the aquatic ecosystem. So these are the negative impacts of the dams on the local fish population. And also let's study about the impact of dam building on forest and on tribal population. So why I've put forest and tribal population together here is because the forest and the tribal population is like two faces of a same coin. If the forests are there, the tribes are there. If the tribes are there, the forests are there. So that is why. So dams, they can directly or indirectly affect the forest. Say for example, there is a hydroelectric dam that is created. So if you need to create a hydroelectric dam, then the neighboring areas deforestation has to be done. So if deforestation occurs, then it will impact the tribal life also. And this deforestation or the destruction of forest is mainly because of constructing big dams. So for hydroelectric power plants and all, that is to generate electricity, very big dams need to be constructed, and for that we need the water area, and not just that, we need the surrounding land area as well. So if we need to make use of the land area, the cutting of the trees, eventually it is a must there. So if this destruction of forest for constructing big dams will therefore cause an ecological imbalance. And not just that, deforestation in order to build dams can also cause landslides, they can cause droughts, they can also cause floods. So how? In the previous slides I have explained to you. And also they can cause loss of flora and fauna, that is the flora for plant and fauna for animal species. So obviously if the plant species are disturbed, the animal species will get disturbed because the herbivores will depend on the plants, the carnivores will depend on the herbivores. Likewise, the food chain and the food web will entirely get affected, bringing an imbalance in the forest ecosystem. And not just that, it will increase the waterborne diseases. Why? Because dams, building of dams will cause stagnation of water. That is, it will prevent the free flow of the water. Therefore, what happens there? It will become a breeding place for mosquitoes and various other pathogens, parasites and all that, leading to a number of waterborne diseases. And because of all these problems, dams can cause flooding, dams will cause deforestation, dams will decrease the population of the flora and the fauna, dams will increase the waterborne diseases. Now, when all this is happening, is it safe for the tribes to live in that particular forest? No, they'll have to be moved from one place to another. So when they have to be moved, or when they have to be moved to rehabilitation and resettlement centers, it will be very difficult for the tribes to adjust there. It will also cause a lot of mental stress as well as health issues to the tribal people, because these tribal people, right from the childhood, the time they are born, they have spent their life in the forest, and beyond the forest they cannot think of a life beyond forest. They are adjusted to that or accustomed to that particular life. So therefore it will impact a lot on the tribals as well. And these tribals, they'll not know any other work to do other than the work which they were depending using the forest resources. So their entire lifestyle will get altered, and that is how the construction of dams can impact the tribal population as well. So that is why, because both are interconnected to one another, the destruction of forest and the tribal people, I have put it in one slide itself. So this was about the impacts of dam on the forest and the tribal life. So this was about the session wherein we entirely studied about what happens or what threats dam poses on the environment and indirectly on the tribal people as well. So we took various subheadings and studied in details about the different problems that can occur to the forest ecosystem and to the tribal people if the dams are constructed across a river. So this was about the session. In the next coming session, let us study about water resources. What are the uses of water resources? And because water is a part of human life, if we overexploit it, what might occur, what might happen, all that we shall study. And also we shall study about the conflicts over water. That is, water has caused a lot of conflicts or fights, both international as well as at the national level. So the conflicts on water, all that we shall study in the next coming session. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.